And I was fascinated, and we had dinner with Undersecretary of State Keith Kruk, and I was fascinated by him too. But Len was a revelation to me. And then along comes this Jerusalem Post profile of Len Khodorkovsky. He is the Chief Marketing Officer and Senior Advisor in the Office of the Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. He's been at the State Department for a few years. He was previously Senior Advisor for Public Affairs in the Iran Action Group, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Digital Strategy in the Bureau of Global Public Affairs, and all-around marketing genius. Len, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Great to have you.
Wow, Hugh, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be on your show. And listen, I always wanted to say this, first time, long time.
And I always ask, have you read The Looming Tower? That's my go-to question for first-time guests. Have you ever read The Looming Tower?
A while back.
I knew you had, given your depth of knowledge of Iran. Len, this Jerusalem Post profile, I'm very proud of myself. I had dragged most of these stories out of you in our 4-hour dinner, but there were still some I didn't know. And I just want you to tell people where you come from and why you bring such passion to the strategic communication campaign of the United States Department of State.
Well, thank you very much, Hugh. Look, I'm a Soviet refugee. I came to the United States with my family when I was 11. We come, my grandparents going way back, or my great-grandmother, died of starvation in the ghetto, in the Nazi ghetto. And my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. They barely squeaked by. My grandfather was liberated by the Russian army. They threw a uniform on him and put him in the Russian army to fight in the Second World War. Unbeknownst to me, which is something I found out 30 years later, is that his high school sweetheart was actually his first wife, not my grandmother, and she passed away unbeknownst to him while she was bringing a care package to him when he was stationed with the Russian army. She froze to death in the woods on her way to take care of my grandfather. Needless to say, my family barely made it out and ended up being in the Soviet Union. My grandparents hated communists. My parents learned to live with communism, but always wanted to get out. And one day in the early 80s, in 1981 to be precise, after our family was refused for a number of years and my parents were demoted, and of course, Jews in the Soviet Union were second-class citizens, some guy shows up on our doorstep and wants to see an apartment where I and my parents and my grandparents all lived together, and left. And a few weeks later, he came, my dad took me out to a soccer match. We come back, I run up the steps, and I see this postcard wedged in the door. I take it out, I give it to my dad. I knew it was something really important. And it turned out to be that was our permission to leave the Soviet Union, because the guy who wanted the apartment was a KGB officer. And that was that. And we had 3 weeks to pack up, sell everything we had. It was dead of summer in 1981. We were all wearing, 3 layers of clothing, boarding a train. I remember saying to my parents, my grandparents, "Are we homeless now? Because I've never known anything but Soviet Union." And, at some point, I guess about a month or 6 weeks later, we walked through the doors at JFK in New York, and we're in America. And, no one spoke English, obviously. We were just happy to be out and starting a new life in the greatest country in the world. And, there's so much more to talk about, but that's the long and the short of it.
Well, Len, there is no short of it. I hope you write a book. I know you've got a lot on your plate when you leave the State Department in a few weeks, and I want to talk about that in a moment and about the Jamestown Group. But I want to play for you a news story, because given what you just told, I want to play Raphael Warnock, who wants to be a United States Senator from Georgia. Cut number 9. This is a sermon in a church in 2016.
We pray for the people of Cuba in this moment. We remember Fidel Castro, whose legacy is complex. Don't let anybody tell you a simple story. Life usually isn't very simple. His legacy is complex, kind of like America's legacy is complex.
Len Khodorkovsky, what do you make of that, given the biography which you just retold to our audience?
Well, there's nothing complex about communism or Fidel Castro or any other form of authoritarianism where the government gets to decide for individuals how they should live, what they should think, and how they should behave. I think it's absurd and crazy. Clearly, this person has no idea what he's talking about. Anyone who's lived under communism knows better. And I hope the Georgians who get to decide in a few short days really take what President Trump said to heart, which is America will never be a socialist country. And when my family came to America, it was it was a privilege, it was an honor. I still don't take it for granted. Freedom is synonymous with the United States of America, and there is no freedom under communism. So it's really a simple issue. Reverend Warnock or anybody else who thinks it's something more complicated is at the very least extremely misguided and I would say not qualified to represent people in the United States of America.
I 100% agree. Now, I didn't tell you this at dinner, but I've been asked before, what are the most influential books in your life? And I always tell people, well, of course, Scripture, but followed by One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich and Vladimir Bukovsky's To Build a Castle, My Life as a Dissenter. Those are the two most important books in my life that are not religious books, because they taught me everything I needed to know about communism and fascism and authoritarianism. And I think it divides the world. Either you understand that or you don't. And if you don't, you'll say stupid things like Donald Trump is a fascist, or you'll say stupid things like Fidel Castro is complex, Len. But if you understand it, you're able to message about Iran in a way that nobody else is. I think that's what made your messaging for Keith Kroc and Secretary Pompeo so effective.
Well, thank you, Hugh. I mean, I only know one way to communicate, and that is simply, clearly, and in a way that anybody could remember what I'm trying to say. And that's what listen. I'm not someone who spent my life in politics. I was in advertising for 20 some odd years in New York. That's where I come from. I was fortunate enough to end up working on President Trump's 2016 campaign with Jamestown Associates. And let me just give a shout out to Larry Weissner and Jason Miller, who took a chance on hiring me as their creative director. It was a privilege to work for them, and that's really was my segue to working in the administration after President Trump was elected. And so, that the communicating in a way that understands what your audience is thinking, feeling, and really wants from you or from your product is what it comes down to. And so it's really simple formula. And I try to bring what I know to serving my country and working for Secretary Pompeo and trying to connect with regular people around the world, whether it be in Iran or Iranian Americans or people, Cubans who want nothing more than to provide a better life for their children, or Venezuelans, or even people who are living under the Chinese Communist Party right now.
So what are you
really
going to do?
Formula.
What are you going to do next, Len? People ought to follow you at Message from Len in order to find out what you're up to, because I came to appreciate this rather late in Team Trump era. But what are you going to do?
Well, after I caught the bug of working on some consequential issues at the State Department, it's going to be pretty hard for me to go back and sell toothpaste or used cars, and so. Listen, I hope to stay relevant. I hope to contribute my voice to some of these consequential issues that I was fortunate enough to work on, whether it's Iran or China or Abraham Accords. Peace in the Middle East is extremely important, and honestly, it's one of the few uplifting stories of this year. I'm really encouraged by what's going on in the Middle East, and I hope that my voice will contribute toward building a better and a better world for my children and for humanity in general. I don't know. Is that too broad of an ambition?
No, I want to know though if you're going to stay there. There is, for example, a public relations battle underway right now to stop the United Arab Emirates from getting the F-35, and they led with Israel this Middle East Abraham Accord. If we turn our back on allies and go back to dealing with enemies, it will be disastrous, and there will be people like you upon whom the country will depend to talk about why the UAE needs F-35s, why Israel needs the qualitative military edge. Are you going to stay in that particular arena?
I hope so. I hope to find an outlet that will allow me to do that. Listen, when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East, I think the core, the most important word, as Undersecretary Kroc always says, is trust. And what made all of these positive things happen in the Middle East is we rebuilt trust with our friends and allies in the region, and that's what really is the glue that's holding all of those peace agreements together. And in my view, if there's any hope for progress, it has to remain wedded to this idea of trust, having the trust of our allies trusting us, and when we speak, we have to mean what we say. And, that's always been my approach, and that's what I hope to continue.
Well, I hope everyone follows Message from Len on Twitter. I hope they go read my Twitter account to get the Jerusalem Post profile of Len Khodorkovsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Len. And I want everyone to get smart and to follow you. And I appreciate all the work you've done on behalf of the United States and peace in the Middle East and for the people of Iran and China and Cuba and everywhere else where authoritarianism rules. You are a formidable opponent, and I'm glad of that. Leonard, thank you. I'll be right back.